Today in this video, we're going to be looking at what histograms are. Histograms are, just to start with, they are a type of graph that utilizes frequency distribution classes. And so they kind of hold a special place in statistics, even though we're still going to be looking at a lot of other kinds of graphs. So a little bit of review. If you look at these two, and if I ask, are these a normal distribution? Hopefully you have an answer for that. Again, a normal distribution should be approximately symmetric, and it should be approximately a mirror reflection where the highest value is sort of in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfect, but approximately you should be able to split this down the middle, and it should be a mirror on each side. Which I would argue, yeah, neither one of these would be that. This is not what they are. It's kind of different. You can kind of take a look at grades. You kind of get an indication of homework is always my assumption of why they become non-normal. In theory, grades should be a normal distribution. You should have a few really high scores, a few really low scores, and everybody else sort of in the middle. But because not everybody actually does their assignments, they don't learn the same way, that's generally not the way it actually turns out. And you can see that here. In both cases, lots of A's, but then we don't get a bubble over the middle. We get lots of A's, got some F's, and it's a little bit chaotic here. If you actually took away so many A's, this could be almost a normal distribution, but there's definitely a high number of A's in both situations. This was the statistics test last year, not this year, the results of the test last year. All right, so a histogram. What is a histogram? It's a graph consisting of bars, so it's kind of like a bar chart, but is not the same thing as a bar chart. Of equal width adjacent. This is kind of important. And with a histogram, they're touching. There's no gap in between them. Bar charts, there's a lot of times there's gaps. So there's no gaps. The horizontal scale represents the classes. So we talked about frequency distributions. You broke your data points into classes of whatever size you chose, and then you counted how often something showed up in those classes. And that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing classes. So this goes from 16 to 20, 21 to 25, and it's how many counts, how many times something showed up in that particular class. That's one of the key things about a histogram. This represents classes. This is a quantitative data. Over here, you could argue either way. You could say, well, is this quantitative or is this qualitative? In theory, this is describing a label. But in reality, of course, these letter grades, they represent a class. You can get an A from 90 to 100. Okay, so this is a class. The B is a class. So I would still argue that this is a histogram, even though at first glance it doesn't actually appear to be that way. Normally you see these classes as the actual number intervals. Okay, so we use histograms to represent quantitative data. Remember that, write that down, because when we have lots of graphs in statistics. Some of them work better for quantitative, some of them work better for qualitative. And in fact, a plain old bar chart, which I'll cover in a second again, that works better for qualitative. But for quantitative, a histogram is a better choice than a bar chart, because they're quantitative values and they have a vertical scale. So essentially you have a horizontal scale related to the class widths, and then you have a vertical scale giving you the counts. How many times did things show up? Like 10 to 15 here showed up, it appears to be 3 times. 16 to 20 appears to be 13 times that it showed up. That gives you the frequency values. So the vertical is always the frequency values. The horizontal is always the classes. So the things that make it: classes, frequencies, no gaps, because we go right from 15 to 16. There should be no gaps here. If you made these by hand, the class center is here on each one of these. We don't usually make these by hand, but in the old days you had to calculate the class center, and we don't have to mess around with that anymore. Bar charts. Bar charts can be touching. They can or they don't have to. It doesn't really matter. But bar charts represent, typically we use them for qualitative data. So like how many people like bananas and apples and oranges and grapes. Okay, so this is there is a counting involved with getting your vertical scale. But here there's not a class. It's not like that we can go from 5 to 10 here and then 10 to 15 here. That wouldn't make any sense. So if it's qualitative data, like in a survey, a lot of times surveys are qualitative. In qualitative data, you're looking at a bar chart would be the better pick. A histogram would not work very well with qualitative stuff. All right, so we're not really going to spend much time here. Bar charts, most people know how to do those already. Most of today is going to be how do you create a histogram, because it's a lot more involved. So that's what we're going to be doing, is creating a histogram. If you want, and if you're in my class and you want to use Microsoft Excel, because I honestly prefer Microsoft Excel over Google Sheets, and I'm going to be going through how to make a histogram with Excel. If you are going to use Google Sheets, that is fine. They attached a video in Schoology for how to make a histogram with Google Sheets, but I will walk you through how to make Excel. If you want to use Excel and you're like, I don't have Microsoft stuff, you can actually go to the CLC website. Actually, I'm sorry, you can go to the Office 365 website and you can put in your star ID and your password, and as a college and the school student, you do have access to the Microsoft suite, which includes Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, all of the Microsoft PowerPoint, all the Microsoft stuff is included. It's part of being in the class. So you can, if you want, do that. You just go to the Microsoft Corporation USA and the login stuff. All right, so like I said, Google Sheets, it's fine if you use that. I'm not going to go step by step how to make that one. But I do have a video attached in Schoology where somebody else walks you through how to make it. There's no point in me doing it again. All right, to start off in Microsoft Excel, you're going to enter your data. I didn't show that, but that's pretty self-explanatory. You're going to take all your data points, you enter all your data points. You're going to want to sort them. So what you do is you highlight them, and then way over in the, it's not the farthest right upper right corner, but close to it, you're going to see this funnel looking thing here, and an AZ, that's your sort and filter. And you're going to want to choose one of these. Typically, you're going to do the A to Z. Now, on the newer Microsoft Excel, it actually says smallest to largest. So if you have an older version, the A to Z is the smallest to largest. If you want it largest to smallest, choose Z to A. I know these look alphabetical, but the Microsoft Excel does interpret that way if you're using numbers. So it'll automatically do it. But you're going to want to sort it, usually smallest to largest, so typically you would pick your A to Z. So you highlight all of your data, you just drag over the top of all of it, and then you come over here and you click on this, and it'll sort it for you. So here I have mine sorted already. What we're looking at here is average points per game by each NFL team during the 2006 season. Okay, so once you've entered your data, and you've sorted your data, and you can put a label up here if you want to, it really doesn't matter. Then you're going to create some labels up here. They're called the topics. You're going to create a bin. You're just going to write the word bin. You're going to write the word frequency, and you're going to write the word interval. Now the intervals, you have to decide. You're going to look at your data and say, okay, how many classes do I want? And remember, the way you do this is you go your biggest data point minus your smallest data point, divided by how many you want, and then maybe you have to round a little bit. So I'm going to be going from 10 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 to 25, and 26 to 30. Make sure that when you decide this, that you include classes that do include your smallest and your largest. If you were just going by fives and somehow you had a 32 in your data set, well, it'd be missing that one. So you maybe got to rethink how you're going to do that. But this, you'll just type this in. Okay, at that point, you're just typing stuff in, after you've chosen and defined what you want your intervals to be, you'll do that. So after that, now what you're going to do is in the bins, and here again, you're just typing these in. You're going to give the up to number, which is just the right-hand side of your classes. So your bin is going to go up to 15, and then the next one is going to go up to 20, up to 25, up to 30 in my case here. So these numbers should just match, okay, the 20 and the 20, the 25 and the 25. So you'll, again, there you're just typing them in. Okay, in the next step now, you're going to be using one of the computer's pre-programmed formulas. And what you're going to have to do is select the column under frequency. Okay, so this column right here. And you're going to go one more than the number of bins. So notice the number of bins stopped here. I went one more than that. Okay, that's important. You've got to do that or it's not going to work. Okay, so you just select the cells that are next to the bins, but go one cell past however many bins there are. Then you're going to, up here, you're going to hit equals, and you're going to start typing the word frequency. Now, the computer, as soon as you put in equals and start typing, Microsoft Excel is programmed with just hundreds of formulas. It's going to start guessing what it thinks you want. Okay, so it's literally doing a little what's called Bayesian probability. We'll get into that later. That's part of this class. But it's searching for what it thinks you want. So probably by the time you get to E or Q, the word frequency is just going to pop up. That's what you want. Okay, so you can stop typing at that point or select it. You can hit enter or something and select it. And there's going to be a parenthesis here. There's going to be two pieces of information that you're going to put into this. So the first piece is going to just be your raw data. Okay, so then the next thing you would do is you would highlight your data array. Okay, so you would just come over here, you'd click, and you drag over the top. That's what you can see I'm doing. This is a screenshot, obviously. You can see that's what I'm doing at this point. So you highlight all of that. And then you're going to have to add a comma. So after you get them in, you're going to have to type in a comma, and then select the bins array. So then you'd come over here and you would highlight your bins. Okay, so what are you telling it? You're saying, hey, you're going to take these numbers, but you're going to count how many times they show up to 15, and then between 15 up to 20, and so on and so forth. So your frequency means to count. It's counting for you, so you don't have to do it. Then you have to hit, after you've got that, you hit Control, Shift, Enter. Okay, basically you're telling it, okay, go do the counting now. Control, Shift, Enter. And it's going to come up with what they are. It's going to count them for you. Okay, so you've got all of your frequencies counted. All right, so you've got that part done. Now we're going to start working on actually making the histogram. So you're going to go to Insert Charts, and you're going to want to insert a two-dimensional column chart. Okay, so you go to your Insert, you go to Charts, two-dimensional column chart. And you can change labels and stuff now, or we can do it later as far as the titles. But we do need to change, at first it's just going to put some numbers in here. Okay, and that's not what we want. Notice this is 3, though it's going to say the first one has 3. The second one has, there's 13, you can see it over here, okay, it's 13. So it's just saying first bin, second bin, third bin, fourth bin. Remember, histograms, their horizontal label needs to be classes. So I need to somehow change that. There's a few things I got to change. I got to change my classes. I also need to have them touching. Histograms don't have any gaps, so I'm going to have to change my width as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to right-click on the horizontal axis, and we're going to go to the Select Data. Okay, so you right-click on the horizontal axis, you hit Select Data, and there's an Edit button. When you hit Edit, you click on that. Then what you can do is you can go through and you can highlight your intervals. So that once you hit Edit, this little box right here is going to show up. And say Axis Label Range. You don't need to type this stuff in. All you do when you get to that is you just drag over the top of these cells right here. So, and it just automatically inserts all of that stuff. When you're done, you just hit OK. After that, it'll have changed. So instead of first bin, second bin, third bin, fourth bin, now you've got your bins going on. And this one here could be 31. We must have had one that was at 31 here. So that one's a little bit goofed up. I would have to probably go back and tweak things a little bit. Okay, but we've got our classes set. Now we got to change the gaps, which is really not hard at all to do. All you're going to do is you're going to go through and you're going to double click on a bar. Let me go back. It'll be skinny like this. You'll just double click on one of these bars. When you do that, you're going to get a side menu that pops up. It's going to say Format Data Series. You simply come down here to the gap width, and there's a dragging bar here. You just grab the bar and drag it down to 0. You could type it if you want to, otherwise just drag it to 0, and you end up with these fat little bars. But now they're touching, there's no gaps. So we've got our classes, we've got our frequencies, and they're not touching. At this point, we do technically have a histogram. When you're working with these, though, you typically want to put in a chart title. There again, if you just double click on that, you can change what that's going to be. And then, of course, if you want to add stuff down here, if you double click down on the horizontal, it's going to come up with Format Access Title. And actually, you can then just type in here, and then you do the same thing. You can double click over here, and you can put in a title here as well. Okay, but what the important part is the classes, the frequencies, and there's no gaps. Even though in the professional world, they're going to want everything labeled. What are we talking about? What does this axis represent? What does this axis represent? I would prefer that you actually do that. Okay, you know what? I think I said that wrong. Well, no, you can double click, or you can go over here to access titles. You can do it that way too. There's 2 ways to go about it. At that point now you're done. You've got yourself a histogram. On the graphic calculator, you can get an estimated histogram. What I mean by that is the calculator, it will choose for itself how many it wants for the class, so the number of classes. You don't get to choose. So yes, it's a histogram, but it takes away a lot of your power. It does it fast, which is nice. So if I just simply say, hey, is this a normal distribution? You can do this. You can go ahead and you can put in your stuff, your data, and you can sort it. You do that under single variable stats. You can have a sort button. You can hit sort, and it'll sort it all for you. Just tell sort list 1. Then what you can do is make sure your stat plot is on. So you go stat plot, and you can select the third one over is your histogram. Just so you know, we're going to be using scatter plots, histograms, box and whisker charts. Actually, we're going to be using this one later on as well. I'll explain what that is at another time. You got to tell it where you want your information from. Whether you want, in this case, you want it from list 1. List 2, there's nothing there, which doesn't matter. You're not getting it from there. But then it'll create a histogram for you, but it has chosen the number of classes, which of course decides the class width, and you don't really get a lot of choice in the deal. You might not see it when you hit graph, so then what you might have to do is hit zoom, and then way down number 9, zoom stat. That you're going to want to know how to do, because we're going to use zoom stat for a lot of things when we graph normal distributions, histograms. So get used to using that one. All right, I do have a project points for you in my class. Here's some problems to take a look at. I want you to pick one of these 2. I don't care which one, pick one. And I want you on your computer. No, yeah, I want you to do it for both. But on the computer, I want you to make a histogram and get it to me. This is going to be under a project assignment. If you're using Microsoft Excel, you can simply email me a PDF. If you're using Google Sheets, you can share it with me. But that is an assignment. This will go in the gradebook. Have a good day.